Hey folks, welcome back. So a little while ago, we had a video on this channel trying to create Pokemon's 19th type. But in this video, we're going to take a step back, and instead think about how we would fix the existing type chart if we were only allowed to make one single change. We're going to be using the same math we used in that last video, and to quickly recap it, we said that if we want to measure the strength of each type in the game, we can solve this simple equation for X. P here is an 18 by 18 matrix, each type on the rows and each type again on the columns. Each value in this matrix is a measure of how likely a move of the row type is to beat a Pokemon of the column type. And these entries are designed to take into account both the offensive and defensive relationships in the type chart. We can simultaneously solve this equation for K and X, but at the end of the day we really just care about X, which is a list of 18 numbers, each one measuring the overall effectiveness of a type in the game. And this is the current ranking of types that we get. A number that's going to be really helpful for us today is to take the standard deviation of this list of 18 numbers, since that's going to give us a measure of the general fairness or unfairness between the types today. The higher this number is, the bigger gap between the best types and the worst types in the game. Now remember that our goal in this video is to make a single change to the type chart, just change one number, to better balance it, or in mathematical terms, to reduce that standard deviation from before as much as possible. To keep this all slightly more realistic though, we're only going to allow one-hop moves, meaning, looking at the 4 possibilities for what can go into each entry of the type chart, we're only going to allow the current value to go one step to its left or one step to its right. This makes sure we can't do crazy things like change water being super effective against fire to just being half effective against fire. We can literally just go through all the possibilities here. There's only 589 of them after all, and we find that the single best change we can make to the type chart is, drumroll please, making poison deal half damage to steel. I really like this one because in addition to being mathematically optimal, increasing the fairness in the game by almost 10%, it also fixes one of my big issues with the type chart, which is that steel is currently immune to poison. I get it's going for how steel creatures couldn't be affected by biological toxins, but I mean, what about the fact that corrosion affects so many different metals? I feel like it's a valid correction to have poison deal at least half damage to steel. It was super cool to look at the ranking of types after this change. We see that the top 3 types stay exactly where they're at in the ranking. Then we get a swap between the next 2, flying and fire. And then later down the list, we see that poison jumps above the 2 types it was currently below, which makes sense because this is definitely a buff to poison. And the only other change we see is a swap between ice and fighting. We see here that while steel gets a lot weaker, which makes sense, the other types that also get a little bit weaker are fairy, fire, water, dark, electric, fighting, bug, and grass. Poison obviously gets a really big boost here, but there are also smaller boosts to rock, ice, and psychic. Meanwhile, ghost, flying, ground, dragon, and normal stay pretty much where they're at right now strength-wise. I actually ended up learning through this exercise just how crazy interconnected the type chart is. Like, the change we made was between poison and steel, but consider how this little change ends up affecting the fairy type. We nerfed steel through this change, and steel is super effective against fairy, so we actually ended up buffing fairy, right? But hold on, we also buffed poison, and poison is also super effective against fairy. And we see in terms of magnitude, our buff to poison was actually more than our nerf to steel, so on net, we actually ended up nerfing fairy through this change. And take it one step further, what does that nerf to fairy do to fighting? Well, it buffs fighting, right? Because fairy is super effective against fighting. But hold on. Remembering back to the beginning of the story, our nerf to steel also nerfed anything that was used to counter steel, aka fighting. Also, our buff to poison nerfs types that poison resists, aka fighting again. So actually, we ended up nerfing fighting. It all just goes to show how crazy connected the type chart is. You make a small change somewhere, and there's these butterfly effects that are super hard to predict. I want to close the video out with 3 honorable mentions of other changes that are also recommended by this method. For example, the second place one is that electric becomes immune to steel. I like this one because it has a nice Pokemon-esque pseudo-sciencey explanation to it. Steel is magnetic, and electricity induces a magnetic field, so when faced with an incoming steel attack, an Electricmon can simply generate an opposing magnetic field and effectively repel the attack. At rank 3, we have a really, what I expect to be controversial change, which is making normal deal half damage to Ghost instead of Ghost being immune to normal. While this does work mathematically, I don't think I would go with this one just because the Ghost normal mutual immunity is so thematically core to the game. And going down the list a bit, there's a really cool one that I like, which is that grass becomes super effective against ghost. I couldn't really come up with a good thematic reason for this, but let me know if you have a good one. And finally, we get to the chaotic part of the video, where those of you who want to know, hey, what if we just made all the commonly accepted worst types in the game super effective against all the commonly accepted best types in the game? Then it is indeed chaos that we get, but not as much as I was expecting, to be honest. Steel and Ghost actually retain their top spots even with these changes. Fairy does drop 3 spots. Fire claims the 3rd spot, likely because ice types become much more valuable now, and so fire rises in popularity and value too to counter those. Ice climbs 2 spots, bug climbs 4 spots, and I was surprised to see grass staying at the bottom, but then remember that we did give grass a buff, yes, but we also gave 2 of its counters a buff. So overall, I think grass is just a really tough type to fix, given its common counters are also types that need some love. And there you have it, folks, the best change to the type chart if we were only allowed to make one single change. If you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos just like this. Any comments are always welcome below, and I'll see all of you wonderful, wonderful people next time.